guys like those Sonic Drift games? No? Well, that's good, because this plays nothing like them. This is the final boost, and I'll be reviewing Dr. Robotnik Ring Racers. Two things I'd like to quickly address before we begin. First, I will be talking about gameplay almost exclusively, and things like graphics and music are largely dropped. And second, I have yet to play online, as I tend not to play games online until I have an above average understanding of the mechanics. With that being said, let's begin. Dr. Robotnik Ring Racers, or just Ring Racers, is a sequel to Sonic Robo Blast Kart 2. A game I always wanted to play, but never really gotten around to. I have watched a lot of streams and gameplay footage of it, and from what I can tell, it's a fairly simple kart racer, which is if we're jumping into it right away seems like the biggest issue with Ring Racers. It's complicated. From the few comments I read about the game, people seem to not exactly be gelling well with the newly added mechanics. And to be fair, the game does suffer from a good deal of bloat in that department. Throughout the game's girthy tutorial section, I'll ballpark and say that I put about 45% of the mechanics taught to me to any practical use through the use of the initial 35 tracks. And for how long the tutorial section is, it never bothered to tell me how to properly use the game's various items. You know, the things I'll be using to help win races. To be fair to the game, however, the items aren't too complex to wrap your head around, but it is strange that it never really comes up. So the mechanics you will be using throughout the game are largely what you will find in any other kart racer. Players will be controlling different characters of different speed, handling, and weights, utilizing the aforementioned randomly selected items, performing power slides around corners to build speed to rocket out of turns, and collecting MacGuffins that's scattered around tracks to assist you in some type of way. What I think helps Ring Racers stand out is the game's physics. It's channeling some kind of momentum-based gameplay that can be found in classic Sonic games, and I find that to be very interesting. Because if you're aware of what Sonic can and can't do in those games, then you could sorta apply it here as well. That can lead to some moments of frustration, especially around hills, but that's mostly far and few between. The track list here is ridiculously long, and I can confidently say that they're well designed. Well, the ones I've played. Out of the first 7 cups, I only found like 3 or 4 tracks to be actually annoying to play. And that's mostly because the springs that are in those stages bounce you all around, often disorienting you after they're done. But the main takeaway here is that the tracks are fun to play, and that's even before getting into the mods that you can partake in, only adding more hours into the game. Hell, there's 7 more cups that I haven't even unlocked yet, and I'm sure there's more. Also, there's a challenge board that works similarly to games like Kirby Air Ride and Super Smash Bros. Brawl to help add even more hours to the game. I really appreciate the focus on single player content here because most indie games will try to kite players to online as fast as possible. Ring Racers is a lot to take in mechanically, and it doesn't exactly follow standard kart racing procedure. I don't believe I understand everything that's going on yet, so I'll talk about the core mechanic, and that's the ring system. While racing, you can collect up to 20 rings, and throughout the race you'll have to feed your kart rings in order to improve both speed and acceleration. The more rings you pump in, the better those things will be. But you also have to make sure to hold on to some rings, because if you're out, or at a seriously low number upon taking a hit, it will cause an extended period of hit stun that can be done through an attack item, or even a rival racer deciding to bump into you. In these instances, the game will not care and will take you for a ride. If you're caught in an unfortunate sequence of constant attacks and racer bumps, it's severely punishing. I actually enjoy this mechanic a lot, and I believe it adds a good amount to the game and makes racing very interesting. The ring system is versatile too. It allows players to use unoptimized racing lines, recover quicker from things like crashes and item attacks, or falling out of bounds, or speeding up racers on straightaways, but you'll also have to watch out not to use all your rings, leaving some for taking eventual hits. It's very risk and reward. The constant meter management is addicting to me, and the proper use of it actually put me out of a lot of bad situations. It kinda feels like a weaker version of boost power from the F-Zero series. There's a ton more things I like about this game, but I do feel the game has a good amount of flaws to cover. How do characters work exactly? Is it me or the information they provide doesn't help? What does class mean? Is it difficulty? Is S and W speed and weight? Where's handling? Where's boost? Is Metal Sonic the best initial character because his S and W are on 8? Does this mean people who play Amy or Tails, for example, will be outclassed? I'd rather have everybody play the same so they can play who they want to play if that's the case. Besides, the mechanics are deep enough not to need character classes in my opinion. The differences between characters need to be made more clearer, however. The rubber banding AI in general gets a little out of hand. While I enjoy the challenge this creates, I've heard people complain about it, and I'd be lying if I didn't say it annoyed me at times. The melee attack racers can perform at 0 or below rank count is almost entirely useless. I've used it once. Same goes for the spin dash, it's only useful for the starting line. Also, I'm not a big fan of the pre-racing positioning thing. Seems kinda unfair for players to screw others out of a possible good start. I don't like the way tricks are executed. Seems overly complex for just something so simple. I will often not notice something was a trick enabling action and will go launching into an unwanted direction because I was already holding the direction prior, and they don't come up enough for me to remember to watch out for them. I know classic Sonic games usually have different kinds of springs with different height levels associated with them, but is that really needed for this game? Once again, just feels like an overcomplication of a simple thing. While I do enjoy the idea of the challenge board, maybe keeping every single thing unlockable behind it was a bit overkill. Speaking of unlockables, keeping major game modes locked was a little silly, but I get it. The game is mechanically heavy and the kart crew wanted to make sure people learned the game to a certain extent before playing online, for example. I'm all for locking something like online behind finishing a single race, but why time trial? I heard this was fixed in the latest patch, so this could be moot by this point. While this isn't a constant issue, the game does suffer from visual noise, making it hard to determine things like rough terrain and rolls sometimes. Chrome Gadget was the worst offender for me so far. All in all, Ring Racers is a really good racing game, and the most fun I had with a kart racer since Crash Team Racing Nitro 3. I think after a few patches, it'll be amazing. But Kart Crew devs will have to decide what they want this game to be. It has a ton of both casual and hardcore elements that has it tripping over its own feet repeatedly. Look, a lot of people feel Sonic Rebel Blast Kart 2 is the better game, but I don't think that means that Ring Racers needs to be a similar one. Although I have my issues with some of the mechanics, my overall opinion of them is generally very positive, and the devs clearly wanted to make a game with a ton of expression, and I can certainly respect that. It's a feeling I never thought I wanted in my kart racers until, once again, CTR Nitro 3. If players want a simpler game in Sonic Rebel Blast Kart 2, then by all means keep playing it. But I think this can do its own thing and eventually be just as good, if they trim some of the fat. We here at Team Crossbody gives Dr. Robotnik Ring Racers a 4 out of 5.